Hi, welcome to One Degree Shifts. I'm Pascal Tremblay. I'm your host, and I'm the co-founder of Nectar. We're a psychedelic support ecosystem. And today I'm calling from the lands of the Sinite and the Ktunaxa people in the Kootenay region of British Columbia. And today we're talking to India Mayorga. Hi, India.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Pascal. How are you?
I'm beautiful. How are you?
Feeling great. Thank you so much for having me here, sharing with me.
It's a pleasure. And what lands are you calling from today?
Yeah, so for everybody, I'm here in Costa Rica. This is where I live, this is where I'm from. And as you introduce yourself beautifully, I come from the Berber tribe of Costa Rica through my mother's lineage. So I'm really close to the territory at the moment outside, just to be able to catch internet and connect with all of you. But yeah.
What are you up to in the world these days? I would love to learn more.
Wow. It's a journey. It's a never ending journey for me. Always traveling through Costa Rica, but right now the focus is on bringing awareness to different projects within the indigenous community of the Berber and a little bit of sharing the story of the community. Working in with consultations as well in psychology has always been my passion since a long time. So I've been doing that and creating right now, creating some digital things because is needed to expand the awareness of the projects and the awareness of what we're doing here with the indigenous community. So that right now is my focus at this moment.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing that work. And today we're talking about re-indigenization, which I've heard you talk about it on Instagram, and you talk about it's the time of the rebirth, and that re-indigenization is the antidote to the last hundreds of years.
Hmm.
Um, Powerful words. Can you tell us more about what re-indigenization means to you, and how can people connect to that idea?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It really goes deep into what I've personally experienced and what I see throughout this journey of life and experiencing people through different ways, different cultures come to Costa Rica to participate with plant medicines, for example, and to go into this really inner space of introspection. And I think that re-indigenization is a path that all humanity must take in order for us to reconnect because we've been disconnected, and that path may lead you to that journey of connecting back to your roots, connecting back to your ancestors, then reconnecting back to the essence of who we are, which is that there's oneness with Mother Earth, that we're all interconnected and we all play an important role, especially today. Especially today. So re-indigenization is that path that we take, and it looks differently for different people, but it's connecting to that knowing, to that essence of who we are.
Hmm. And on a large level, re-indigenization is really about um, bringing back power and empowerment and the managing of lands and communities back to indigenous people so they can preserve their language and their lands and their traditions. And it's also about for all of us to re-indigenize ourselves to connecting to our roots, right? So this is not necessarily just about the first peoples; it's also about all of us. And yes, reconnecting to Pachamama and the web of life and reconnecting to our true self. And so, would you like to talk a little bit more about that as well?
Yes, there's different angles, there's always different perceptions of one subject. And in this case, for somebody, for example, that is living in a land that they were born, perhaps their parents were not born from there, then they have a journey of discovering, well, where are my parents from? Where is that ancestry root from? And then taking that journey, and then discovering what were the ancestors there, what were the practices there. And that's a way of re-indigenization for you to connect to the gnosis of all of this spiritual education that was left by the ancestors of those lands. And then bringing even those prayers, those ceremonies, those rituals to your own essence, to your own life, because they carry power. They carry a lot of weight. And energy is essence, is prayers, is vibration that we put up. And we can claim this power from our ancestors that were really and truly connected to the land. And if you're not from where you're from, then you can also a way of re-indigenize yourself is to learn from the people of that land, to learn who lives there, what are their practices, what is the culture there, the language, if there's still indigenous people living in that land currently. And if not, who lived there? What were their practices, and honoring that as well. I think there's different angles. For indigenous people here in Costa Rica, for example, and I'm sure pretty much around the world, we're still in this dilemma, with the states, with the government state about lands and which land belongs to what. There's some national parks that were created that belong now to the state, but does it belong to them, or is it indigenous land? And um, what's going to happen with land that was bought during a period of time, and it belonged to the communities there, but because they're always moving, they move in different times, then they didn't own the land. It wasn't, part of the consciousness of this ownership. First of all, that's part of the process of re-indigenization, is knowing that there's no ownership of the land. And yet there is a great power that comes with stewarding the land and guardianship of the land. And I think part of the re-indigenization process, the path, I should say, for indigenous people is knowing that there's a sovereignty that's been given and we've been able to hold on to for a long time. And part of that is the guardianship of the earth and the lands. And a lot of it has been disturbed, like everyone else in humanity, through, we talked about it earlier, through colonization, through different reasons that put us where we are today. And so part of the path of giving the lands back to the indigenous people for that guardianship is for that protection of that connection that's been there for millennia, from those indigenous people with Mother Earth, practicing their songs, their rituals, their ceremonies, their payments to the land, their offerings to the land, all of this to bring balance. That's the belief system. And if
Mhm.
you believe it, you conceive it. So it's like, that's how profound it goes. And if we can all unite to knowing that that's where the essence is coming from, it's not about mine. It's more about, well, there's something big here. Like, let's not forget. And in that process of re-indigenization, then it comes to protecting the culture, protecting the language, protecting the stories, protecting the connection that we have through the different realms of the dimensions of the spirits of nature and what's there with the elementals, and teaching that to the children, to the youth from a early age, and there's still a possibility for us to maintain and sustain that. And it all has to do with the path of re-indigenization to the indigenous people. Very different from a lot of people, but everybody can participate in this, and we should, as human species and humankind, because we are all interconnected to Mother Earth. And if there's a big community of people living in the same land for thousands of years, practicing all of this knowledge, connecting to the essence of that land, to those spirits, they have they already had this relationship going for a long time. Shouldn't we cultivate that, honor that? We don't know why this is important right now, but I'm telling you, it will be important for humanity, of the paths and the
Mhm.
decisions that we're taking today, and the disconnection that we can see more and more with technology and other things that, yeah, it's connecting us, but it's also disconnecting us. And what does that mean to our children and our future as humankind? So I think it's very deep. It's a very profound subject that we can go into, and different angles for it. But yeah, land is that important, and it's more than just a title. Is the stewardship and is the guardianship, and that goes along with education. That comes along with the support from other people from the outside that knows what happens when we destroy our resources in a global scale, when we know what happens when we destroy the waters through contamination, when we pollute with chemicals our lands. We already know this. We know what it causes to our body. We know what it can bring to us. So, can we stop this in indigenous lands that have no awareness in a global scale of what this creates for humanity? We're 10 steps ahead of what their perception is. So how we assist
Mhm.
in the preservation of those lands for that specific reason.
Yeah, beautiful. I hear connection and guardianship and honor and connection and community. Um, and so it makes me kind of really connect with the idea of belonging, right? Like coming back to where we belong, which is on the earth together as people, as communities, as stewards of the earth, which is our natural being. And I'm curious, India, if you'd like to share a little bit more about your personal path of re-indigenization. Like, where did that take root, and how have you been interfacing with this in your own life, and how you've been reconnecting to that beautiful and deep concept that you shared just now?
Wow, that's such a very profound question for me because the journey has been long. It's been a long journey to get to this point of re-indigenization of myself and what that means for me. Um, as a I guess it all started with deconstructing my mind and my belief systems imposed, and that started through psychology work and cleaning my body and my temple. So it's a long journey. There's different steps that I've taken into this original knowing of the essence of who we are and this connection that we have together. And but I would say that along the path of psychology and therapy and working on the shadows and the things that are there, one of the fastest route was plant medicine. It was that back door, and it was beautiful because I had the opportunity to sit in Peru with the indigenous Chippewa people in Peru, and I always knew that this medicine was calling me, and it took a decade for it to come to the manifestation of it. I guess she really wanted me to come in a very clean altar temple body way when I came to her. So it took a decade for me to clean my body. Out of all the things that I've indoctrinated myself through the system and the beliefs and the marketing campaigns and this everything, you can name it. I've gone through it because I was born outside of the territory of the indigenous of my mother's lineage. She was born there. I wasn't. So my story is a little bit different. And so plant medicines really connected me back to my ancestral roots in a sense of my mother participated with me in the ceremony. I invited my mom. She always wanted to go to Machu Picchu in Peru and get to know this amazing culture that she's always read about, the Incas. And I'm like, perfect. But there's a prize. We gotta go to a ceremonial gathering of this indigenous people of Chippewa, which I've been studying about, and it's a really ancestral lineage. And I think we both felt safe because they were not from the territory. So I don't know. Sometimes I guess there's still a consciousness embedded in our subconscious, deep, deep, deep of um, embarrassment of the spiritual or the mystic or the medicines. So my mom would never dare to go to a medicine man in the tribe and do this because it's been um, programmed. It's is the religion aspect of it, which is the doctrine of that's not good. And
Hmm.
so for me, it was easier to get to Peru and experience this in an outside container in a different land and with the different indigenous people and somebody that I could trust from the Amazons. And so that opened the path to connecting to my ancestral lineage through my mother and through a very, very beautiful ceremony and a very profound intention. That was my intention. I would like to heal all of my ancestral roots, all of this things that my mother is not telling me, that my father is not telling me, this all of these things that I can recognize through my journey in psychology. I really want to clear it profoundly because there's things that I'm pretty sure I didn't cover. And so she did that. The plant medicine did this, and this opened the path into me discovering who I am and the essence of self, and also the character I play and the best way that I can use the resources given in this matrix, in this womb of co-creation that we're in, to be able to bring awareness of the true value that we each hold and the importance of clearing the ancestral lineage and the things that we have been carried from
Hmm.
others, and transmitted through the environment, through the genes, through depending on on various things. But I would say it's been a long process, and I feel like it's still forever progressing, because then you know that you're connected to nature. And now,
Mhm.
what the Buddha state, Jesus state, like all these enlightened ones, speaking of this inter deep connection, and what is the role then? And where we are in humanity. And I feel that that's where creativity comes along, and you just see where you are and what you're to give back with the resources given, with the gifts that were given to you. There's a beautiful story in our tradition here in Costa Rica, in the Berber tribe, and it says that when we come out of creation, molded, in clay, and we're given the birth of life, and come to the earth, to Iridia, which is this plane, we're given tools when we are born. That's why all babies come with their hands closed like this, because the tools are already given to us, and we are to use these tools here. That's the whole purpose. That's the whole game. And how do you know how to use these tools if you're disconnected from the source itself, from the matrix itself, from the womb itself of Mother Earth? I mean, it's very hard. You would not fulfill what you're meant to
Mhm.
fulfill. You'll be distrayed, you'll be floating away, pulled by the winds of social media, pulled by the winds of politics, of the news, of the agendas. It's a very easy path to go astray. So one must focus, and a good way is that connection with Mother Earth. Like there's something, an intelligence that could be felt, through her. And
Mhm.
I often wonder if this whole age of technology can create this profound disconnection completely to her. Are we in the verge of that? And and so that's why this is important for all of us. And how do you then play with the technology, with the ancestral knowledge, with our connection to earth? How do we maintain the balance, sustain, each other? So it's been a long journey, and right now it's transpiring through nature. It's channeling, listening, really holding presence in the now, to feel her guidance and to feel what the ancestors of my ancestors here are speaking to me about. So it's a very interesting journey, very profound journey, and it's knowing self.
Mm.
And after that, there's no limit. You're in this creative path.
Mhm. And I think the ancestors and, Mother Earth is singing next to you because I'm hearing, is it a bird or an insect? But,
See,
it's
it's a
definitely
bird.
singing a song that's quite enjoyable. Um, and thank you for sharing. And what I'm hearing as a thread around kind of your personal journey where re-indigenization is, going back to the origin of things, leaving the ego behind and really connecting with the relationship we have with the land, right? Um, and what I'm also hearing is, decolonizing as well, like decolonizing so we can re-indigenize. And um, Jack Forbes, who's a scholar, he said that re-indigenization is a way to resist the monocultures of the mind,
Hmm.
and that it's about resisting Wetiko disease, he calls it, which is
Hmm.
another word for insatiable consumerism.
Hmm.
Um, Can you share a little bit more about your own perspective of decolonization and what it means, maybe for you or for the world in general? We all have our own baggage when it comes to that, regardless of where we are in the world. I think we've all been exposed to colonization in some shape or form, and we're all kind of at different levels of getting rid of that because obviously it's not working. It's obviously not working. That those ways of living on the earth are not working, and so I'm curious what you'd like to share about around the process of decolonization.
Yeah, it's a subject of really the mind, like you said, deprogramming the mind. You could do that in various ways. There's different angles to it, really, because there's been so much distortion, that we've consumed through food, through what we see, what we hear, and through what's being sold to us of who we should be. So then decolonizing yourself, and I'll take myself as an example, was it decolonizing my body? what I was eating, the substances I was putting in, and really clearing this field, this body that then connects to an energetic field, and then I'm able to expand even further and really use it, and so that I can receive different information, so that I'm not always utilizing my immune system to be flight or fright and all of this. And then it's also working on your mental state and asking yourself questions of your behaviors. I think that a lot of my behaviors, like I said, in this process of unwinding my mind through psychology, and what I do with my clients is asking these questions like, well, why do you act like this? What do you do this for? What does it bring? Or, where does it take you? And slowly but surely, then you understand that a lot of it is programming through your parents. A lot of it is subconscious programming through your parents as well. And some of it comes from education. So um, we have technology, which is an advantage for us to be able to pull a lot of information that if you really do your homework, you can find out that it's valid. And um, a lot of the masters throughout times, I'm gonna keep speaking about it because there's an amnesia happening in humankind, and it's because of what we're eating, what we're consuming, how much energy we're spending in other things except ourselves, our inner selves. We are just giving energy like it has no value, and that's what's being sold to us. It's just, give me energy to be in Instagram, give me energy to be in Facebook, give me energy to be in TikTok, give me energy to be, to work 8 hours. Like all this energy is coming out of us, and we're giving it, just giving it. And what we get in return is not enough to fulfill this deep, deep sense that is here. And so part of the deprogramming is going through all these phases, from the body to the psyche and then to the spiritual realms, into who you are in your essence. And for that, you have to connect to your heart, and you have to connect to your nature, that you can do through practices. Different ancient people have different practices through it: meditation, yoga, fasting, plant medicine, ritual, like you name it, you can find it.
Mhm.
The information is there. Thankfully, we have internet for that. And so my own process was that it was cleaning my house, and it, you still have tendencies in this material world. There's still tendencies, and I feel that it's a continual evolution of letting go, you know, and that's why it's so lovely to see that essence still embedded in different cultures of indigenous people. Very simple.
Mhm.
Very simple. And
Mhm.
that's why people love going and sharing with indigenous people, because they feel this essence, this natural stay way of being, of just being pure and
Yeah,
simple.
what is that, right? Like in the modern world, it's like, what is being? I'm too busy doing. And um, yeah, it is a global amnesia and a global remembrance that is slowly happening, I think, around um, the idea of relationships, and that we're not. I think part of the colonization way of seeing the world is that we're all separated, right? We all live in silos,
Mhm.
we're all working in silos. We're not connected, and all the beautiful things you've shared so far. And I think kind of the re-indigenization way of seeing the world is all about relationships, right? And I heard you mention the word honoring earlier, and so when you're connected to the whole, and when you're connected to the relationships around you, you're a lot more likely to honor them. And so, honoring the land and the animals and the waters around us, paying our respects and making offerings, and doing prayer and things of that nature. Uh, and we talked about this before on a previous call. You talk a lot about reconnecting with the land, and self cultivation as our reason for being on the land. And it's a way for us to feel that um, humanity is part of the whole. And I'd love for you to share a little bit more around connecting with the land and honoring the land. Like, what does that look like for you, and what does it mean? And what happens when you do that?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a very important question for all of us, especially like I keep saying, now are the times. I mean, we see a lot of the signs, there's a more and more awakening. There's more plant medicines traveling throughout the consciousness of planet Earth. Why is this, vast archive of ancestral knowledge now traveling, and there's more expansion of consciousness? And there's a call. There's a call that she's making. There's like there's this illusion of separation that's been embedded in their consciousness. Wake up, don't fall into a deeper state of the dream. It's already enough that we're in one level. Let's not go further down that hole. Get a hold of ourselves. We came into a womb and we came here united together, all interconnected. And that recognition of the sacredness of our interconnection and of all life, it's imperative for our survival. And I say survival because we do reside in planet Earth, and she will do what she needs to do, and she will go through the cycles that she needs to go through. And she also listens to the ones that are here, the ones that were left to guard, to steward, to sing the songs, to make the offerings, whenever we're taking from this side too much, that we can bring balance to this side, so that, if somebody passed away, we can honor the process of that life that was brought in a very unique way. When somebody's bring birth into creation, how we then deposit all of the organs, all of the, everything, the umbilical cord, everything goes down to the earth again, to make sure that there's a
Hmm.
connection that's profound with her, because we were in this womb for 9 months and all we can hear was a mother and the environment. And this is, such deep connection. And that recognition of the sacredness of who we are embodying when we come to this plane cannot be dismissed. And that's been the agenda, that's been the watico, like you mentioned earlier, of this illusion. First of all, separation of self, and that's why then you start consuming and looking, because you've been so disconnected that now they got you. And now
Yeah.
this consciousness that's there waiting to feed on this gets all of your
Hmm.
psyche. And then now you're almost, I don't know if unconscious, I would like to say, but yeah, pretty unaware of some certain things that you do and why you do them. So you have to catch yourself, and for that you have to be in the present moment, and for that you have to use the sacredness of our relationship. And Mother Nature is a good place to start, in a park, in a lake, wherever you can find that little tree. Sit down, take off your shoes, put your butt in the ground. If you're a woman, lift up that skirt, put it in the ground, seriously, and just sit and connect to the wind that's blowing, to the sounds that the leaves are making. Just take that moment of sacredness and know that you are co creating that's in front of you. And she, on the other hand, is really attentive, listening to what you have to say and how you can start this relationship. She's waiting. She's actually calling us to do this with her. And that's what we're seeing in the world. What's happening in our
Yeah.
insides is being reflected in the outside. you know are the wars going to keep
Hmm.
continuing? Are the massacre of the children, the corruption, the distortions, the you know prostitution of the forests, is all of this going to keep happening? It will, until we connect to this essence of this sacredness. And nature is a good place to
Hmm.
start. It doesn't take that long. It does take, you to get out of your house and put your phone away and, lock it off for an hour and do this and make it a ritual and a practice.
Hmm.
But it's
Right.
in our hands. I mean, that's why cities are developed, just to take us away from our connection. Again, another tactic for separation.
Hmm. I the alphabet, just to show kind of like how uh deep and nuanced colonization is. The alphabet, like way hundreds of years ago, the symbols of the alphabet used to represent animals.
Mhm.
And somewhere along time, people started changing the letters to be completely disconnected from the shapes of the animals. And I think the Q was like one of the last remaining letters that kind of looked like a snake way back then. Um, and now like our actual alphabet is completely disconnected from nature. And so even the words that we're writing and the words that we're using have been colonized. And so that's how deep the rabbit hole goes when it comes to undoing those systems, and looking elsewhere. And what I'm hearing from you, in what you just shared so beautifully, is the idea of listening, attuning, and connecting to nature. And Jim Quimby, he's an elder here in the Kootenay region, and he's a poet, and he wrote something along the lines of, uh, "Nature is God's way of telling you it's your turn to create something as beautiful as this." Um, and so the invitation is there, and um, you talk about honoring their lands. And um, when I moved to the Kootenays, here in Caslo, I really started to connect more with the land. And you shared before around honoring the lands where you stay and what's happened on that land, the ancestors of that land, and vocalizing your gratitude for the land. And one question you asked me on our previous call was, as an invitation for people to connect with Re-indigenization, is whose native land am I on, and what stories were and are present here. Can you talk a little bit more about that sort of connection to the land and asking those questions, and what your experience has been in connecting in that way? Because I find that beautiful and also potentially very powerful for people to just ask those questions.
Yeah. You started with a very interesting subject, which is this connection with language and the distortion of language. So I want to piggyback from that tale. Um, and one of the things that we are looking for in this re-indigenization path that we're taking as humanity, or we should be taking as humanity, is the preservation of language for the indigenous people, and it's very strong. I feel like the majority of the globe has this romantic idea of a novel of these indigenous people and the tribe hidden in the Amazons, hidden tucked in the jungle, and they speak the language, and there's a couple of videos and they're like, perfect, kumbaya, we got it. And apologies if that offends anyone, but to me that just means great. And it is an important thing that it's happening right now with language. And so what you brought up actually sparked a question. I don't want to deviate from your question, but it sparked a question regarding, the importance of the language, and why are we even fighting to preserve indigenous languages, and is this part of a bigger agenda of separation? So I leave that, question to the audience for us to ponder about the importance of languages that are still there, and perhaps even tapping into
Mhm.
your own ancestral language of the closest lineage that you're from, just learning a few words and see how that feels and vibrates in your body, what it awakens. And it will be a good experiment for people to try and see if something comes up regarding with their ancestors when you pronounce these vibrations that come from your specific ancestral lineage. And so I wonder if you're vibrating this specific language that's being chanted, what it does with nature and the importance for this preservation of the language. And yeah, sorry, I don't know if you were gonna.
No, no, yeah, I was gonna share that, in that colonization of language and kind of the loss of richness around language is not only for indigenous languages, in terms of the first people. It's also around English. Like, I have a book here that talks about, in English, there used to be like 32 or 35 different words to describe wind, for example. And those different words spoke from a different era where people actually were connected to wind enough to have all those kind of words, right? Like the different types of wind, where it comes from, how it feels. They had all these nuanced, rich layers of language that describes wind, which obviously reflects a deeper connection to nature. And so, it's a very fascinating subject. And Wade Davis actually has a really good book, and I forget the name now, but he writes really beautifully about his experiments, as an anthropologist, with
Mhm.
Native people around language and the loss of what that means. And it's a very rich, deep, layered conversation. So yeah,
Beautiful. I have
coming
to
back
take
to
a look at that resource.
yeah,
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 because
it's
like what you were
beautiful.
saying regarding the connection to the land where you're from. For example, right now, you know that you've mentioned that in Canada there's indigenous people there, so therefore you can learn a little bit about their culture, learn a bit the language, maybe how they refer to the elements, to the mountain, to the beings there, to the spiritual guardians there. There's so much knowledge they can share, and because this has been vibrating in that field through millennia and in an honoring ceremonial sacredness way of this connection relationship that we have with Mother Earth, then you can bring this, and that can create this interconnection that we have naturally. You can grab a little bit from what the essence is already in the field. You can pick information from that environment and grab it. And I feel that that's part of the healing process. And it's a thin line. Let's not, it's not appropriation. It's honoring what's already there. It's honoring, what's been living there for a long time, recognizing it, giving thanks for those ancestors, but you're not making it your own because it really doesn't belong to you. It's not your culture if you're not from those lands, but you can utilize it. And what's so rich is that you can actually bring also offerings from your ancestors to those lands through the songs that were sang by them. I know that there's beautiful people all over the Celtic population, spiritual population, that are raising awareness again into those songs, beautiful songs that they sang to nature. And so there's always resources with internet that you can really profoundly feel, and bring that as an offering to Mother Earth, because I mean she knows when you're faking it, or you're trying to sing a song that it's a language that you don't know it, and you're like, it's like, why are you doing that to yourself? Like, let's just be in silence. It's maybe even better, So it's honoring that, is respecting what's there, and it's also making sure that you're being truthful and recognizing. And it's okay to have an honest conversation of, I don't know anybody in this land. I don't know who this belongs to. I don't know what happened
Hmm.
here, but here I am, you know, and I know that we have a connection. Speak like you would speak to any relative that you have. Is That's the idea.
Yeah. You're so right, and I think the modern world has kind of made ceremony and ritual kind of this complicated, unobtainable type of thing that needs to happen only like when we're born, when we're married, and when we die. But it can be very simple, and you can do ceremony and ritual in every day. You can approach every single thing as a little ritual or a ceremony with the intention you bring to it, and the energy that you bring to it as well. And I think there's a lot of beautiful, rich layers of connection that's possible when we engage in life that way. And it's not just about the peak experiences, it's also about the lulls in between, right? Like ceremony and ritual can live in that. We don't need to go to a big ayahuasca ceremony to be in ceremony. So there's a lot of power, I think. And I think part of re-indigenization is reconnecting to our rituals and ceremonies that connect with who we are and where we are. I think that's accessible to everyone.
Yes, I mean, I've had the privilege to travel across different lands in the globe, and every time I sit with a different culture, I'm fascinated to sit and hear the elders speak about their creation story, the animals there, the ancestors, the mountains, which rivers, and it just fascinates me because they're taking me into their journey and their story of this reciprocity with Mother Nature that they've been enduring for thousands of years, and the messages that have come through, their ancestors, like the Hopi, for example, or like in Mexico with the Urikuta or Chipio. It's just so alive, and I'm pretty sure you can travel throughout the globe and see more. I wish I could do that because, I mean, that part of the journey fascinates me, just learning about the different cultures that are still there, really holding strong to their connection and to the rituals and
Hmm.
ceremonies, and very simple. It's very simple, and they're very humble, and it's just this simplicity that is getting distorted. It's this image, like I said, is this capitalism, this consumerism, and so we're like in this edge of ensuring that we connect to our true essence so that we don't deviate for this simplistic message. It's very simple. Your inner
Mhm.
world is creating your outer world, and whatever you see around you is your own practice and what's happening here. And if you want to connect to your true essence, nature is a good place to start and to hold you through this process,
Mhm.
and then keep building those relationships with the other human kind, and be kind and loving to everyone, just like you would with your own resources, with your own water, with your own food, with your own, just like that. We take care of each other all the time, just like a plant, a river, a human being, a baby, an elder, you know, everything is sacred.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm pretty sure
And
we feel it. We feel it. Anybody who's on plant medicine, like I said before, we feel it. It's there, right? So
that's the
why do we
number
easily
one
forget?
that's the main effect that people like true research have found that psychedelics do is reconnects you to the divine and the unity of things. And it's a felt sense that once you feel it once, you can't undo it. It's not, you can put it back in the boxes. Once you feel that connection, you've changed forever. And um I want to talk a little bit about something a little bit different, which is technology. And you shared before that you feel, and you mentioned the word distortion just now, like there's been a distortion of the original peoples because we grew up with technology. And without technology, there wouldn't have been so much sharing of culture and all those ideas we've been sharing on this podcast, which is online. So I'm curious, what role can people with access to technology play in supporting re-indigenization and reciprocity inside the land, and the communities and the indigenous people as well.
Yeah, there's a beautiful story in our creation story of the Bribri people, and it says that Cebu is creator. So whenever Cebu created this matrix that we see here in this dimension, he created indigenous people from the core of the earth, the inner core of the earth. There's 4 layers down, and then from there we came up through different layers of the dimensions to this plane, to Mother Earth. I mentioned that earlier. And then that's the original people. That's the people that are here now in this current life events, after the last wipeout. And so where do the others come from if they're not like indigenous, like, native, let's call indigenous people, like the red corn, what we call the red corn. They say, well, the story says that then Cebu grabbed from the stars and brought these other seeds. And then he brought them down 3 layers. They came from one of the sky's dimensions. And then he brought them three layers down and put them in a boat in Iridia in the waters. And then they were blessed with technology, with learning how to navigate, how to see astronomy, how to just evolve with this gift of technology. And it is in our stories in Cosmic Vision that the reason why he did that is because there will be a time that we were going to be uniting and sharing this information together. From the simplicity of coming to Earth and working with the elements of nature, which is embedded and gifted as a knowing for all indigenous people, we would all share the same message. And so we actually need a lot of guidance from the outside world, because technology, I think that we as a technologically advanced human race, compared to the now, because we compared to before, but compared to now, I don't even think that we know what we're playing with, and how advanced we're going with all of this that I'm hearing with the AI, and all the things that could cause, and how fast we're moving ahead. And because I see that there's not a lot of safety features around this topic, then I'm saying, okay, well, there's a lot to be concerned there. And how can we then utilize what we've learned thus far about technology and apply it to indigenous community for the well-being and the sovereignty of what they're stewarding in the land? So there's a lot of permaculture principles that can be gifted, through technology. There could be a lot of arts and entertainment that could be given through technology for storytelling, for new ways for the youth to listen to the elders and creatively transform that in something magical that can live in the technology of sharing cultures. um, and it also, have dialogues, amongst different cultures of different parts of the world of topics that are like this. There's not a lot of access of information like this, so I feel like it's more of a roundtable conversation that needs to happen.
Mhm.
I cannot speak on behalf of all the indigenous people. There's different necessities, there's different needs that they have, there's different points of views. If they still have spiritual leaders in that community, it's all part of that model of re-indigenization and reciprocity, is to listen. You listen to the land, and then you listen to the people that are in the land, and then you figure this out. So I would say start with a conversation with the elders if you really want to do that, if that's part of your calling to help and support the preservation of the lands, of the culture, of the language, of this beautiful moment in humanity where we're getting so disconnected from nature, but yet there's still small groups, conglomerations of communities around the world that still hold that. How do we support that? Because, like I said, I don't even know where we're heading as humanity. That perhaps that cultivation right now, that seeding right now, that reciprocity model of giving the tools that the outside world have gifted us with, we can return back for sovereignty models to flourish, that perhaps our future generations all over the globe are going to benefit from, a safe heaven, a garden of Eden. Who knows?
Mhm.
There's so much
Yeah,
potential of why we should be investing in this in different scenarios spiritually, to know self, and to adopt this deprogramming of mind, and this connection, and to support a cause that I would say is beneficial for the whole.
absolutely, and you're right about the chase towards technology and kind of the rapid advancement of all that, and, I feel like humanity's chasing these technological breakthroughs, but doesn't quite have the spiritual fortitude or the spiritual level of deep connection to spirit to really kind of hold that in a good way. And that's one of my biggest wishes for humanity is that we, um, yes, grow technologically, but also grow spiritually and really work on those relationships in a bigger and more inclusive way in the future. And um, when we talked last week or a few weeks ago, you talked about kind of the combination of reciprocity and technology as and I'll quote you, as the possibility of doing things in a mindful, thoughtful, and felt way, not imposing, not dictating, but collaborating, empathizing, bridging, harmonizing, and healing the wounds of our ancestors. I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah, it's a long process. I think that we're just in the beginning stages of this healing process for humanity, of this disconnection and remembering all the things that we've done as a collective, so healing all this colonization mindsets and all this material consumerism, this wetico, and like seeing how many of us can wake up to the fact of our
Hmm.
uniqueness, our preciousness, our sacredness. And with this journey ahead of us is connecting back to this profound knowing that we are actually collaborators, and that we can infuse a vision and make it come reality. That's how powerful we
Hmm.
could be.
Hmm.
And technology can lead us to separation, more separation, because we're so just in one plane of visibility, just with one channel or various channel, but distracting from this reality. So it's which reality we're playing with. It's very it may sound very
Hmm.
dramatic, but I mean, it's the first time in human history that we're going to go through these changes. And what I
Yeah.
can observe from nature, what I can learn from the elders, is that moment of the now, of the pure now, and letting go, and prayer. And the prayer comes through giving thanks, through a vision of something that you believe so deeply that's already there, and it will manifest.
Hmm.
And as a collective, we have the opportunity to do that. And so with technology, whenever it's, and it's slipping through our fingers through these massive corporations that are the ones managing this and conducting that, storyline. We have responsibility for to our youth of how we want to create a reality for them in the human nature, in our human essence, in our original form. And right now is when we make decisions. Their parents are not interested in that, and some parents are going to be like, well, okay, hold on, what does that mean? And what would be important for my child? Like, is it important for them to know where an apple comes from, or do I just keep buying it from the supermarket? And they just think that it comes from a box. It's
Mhm.
that connection that you are gifted with food, you're gifted with water, you're gifted with everything so that you can thrive, so that you can explore, so you can create, so you can expand. And with unity consciousness, what we can create is it's enormous, it's beautiful. So I do trust that technology can put us there creatively and inspiring and uniting us in that way. That is the vision, that is the prayer.
Yeah, and it's so inspiring, and that's why this podcast is called One Degree Shifts, is because we all have the power, um, in everything that we're doing, including when we're online, of like how are we interfacing with this social web of which is really a living entity, the internet. It's an
Mhm.
organic reflection of humanity, and so whatever you're putting into it is influencing the entire space. And so I find that the small micro moments, like a prayer or a song or giving thanks or showing appreciation for someone, or yeah, sharing to your kid like where does an apple come from, and why does Mother Earth love him so much, and why is he so well loved? And those small things can really have large paradigm shifting influences on the world. And so I find a lot of solace and a lot of hope and a lot of energy and a lot of inspiration and approaching life that way, and really looking at the small details of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and connecting that way, and finding peace in that. I know that it's changing things that are way beyond my understanding in some very tiny way, but it's part of a collective, it's part of a movement, it's part of a connected web of life that's pushing in that way. And so we're never alone doing that, and I find that very comforting, especially. And I was checking out your social media yesterday, and um, you talked about psilocybin, and you talked about that indigenous people and everyone really are left with a gift, and it's a time to use it, and that the lands are speaking of ancestral healing. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your connection to psilocybin and ancestral healing. Yeah, what does that mean to you, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, like I shared with you earlier, with plant medicine in general, in general, um, they've been part. I haven't consumed many, but they've been part of the journey of my own ancestral healing, my own psyche healing, emotional healing, even physical healing. I would say of things that I am unaware of because I have a very limited perception of my body and the capacities of my body. But I know that a lot of was done on a metaphysical level. And when psilocybin was introduced to my awareness, it was very different, a very different sensation than any of the plant medicines. The plant medicines, such as ayahuasca, have a spirit, and with psilocybin, it felt very different. It felt like I was actually plug into this dimension, if you may, to this network, and it really felt different like that. And so with that, my prayers have always been in the process of re-indigenization to myself is to reconnect back to nature, to reconnect to I know the powers that we have with communication with nature, with discovering, this intrinsic communication back and forth that we have. And so with psilocybin has been an opening, an awareness of the messages that she leaves everywhere, and the songs that have been sang and the prayers that have been told in a specific place, and also the energy that's left in certain places, or energy moving through places. It just opens up this whole array of information of this dimension, different dimensions within this dimension. I mean, it's it just takes you out of the realm of possibilities, and so this medicine has allowed me to go a step further than I ever thought possible in the process of re-indigenization, like going back all the way to the original point and essence of who I am here, and then take me back to the womb of creation, the universe, creator, and then I am, you know? So it's like, it takes me the whole way. And then what am I left with is from the I am coming back to do separation, going back to this womb, going back to this land. And it's like, bloop, and then there's me, India Mayorga, and this in this land, in this play, in this co-creative process that the I am that I am is now manifesting through my perception, through my eyes, and it wants to play and it's never done before. It's the first time. And what are we gonna do? And and so with because you have that feeling with psilocybin, everything is possible. You can create anything, you can be inspired with anything, and it's there and you feel it and it's tangible, and there's messages coming from everywhere, your guides, your ancestors, if you really have the discipline and sit with it. So it's a medicine that I feel is being practiced through very different lineages from all over the world in different ritual ceremonies, from the Greeks to the Celts to the indigenous in Mexico to who knows where else is travel. So I feel that that's where the interconnectedness come from. It's like it was left for a
Mm,
reason for us to know that we're all wired in this matrix, and we're all playing in different
mhm,
realms together. And so connecting to the ancestors means different things, whenever you're with psilocybin. Um, but definitely a
mhm.
medicine that a lot of ancient cultures have used as rituals to be able to open up to the gnosis, which is, a beautiful medicine that has allowed me to do that.
Right, so it's yeah, it's the recognition of the all the relationships, right? As it brings you into all these origin points and it brings you back. It also reminds you that you can be an active player in the story, right? Which is uh, empowering and inspiring. And it allows us to explore those many layers of ancestral healing. Um, and I love what you said earlier about reconnecting to the spiritual ecology of our ancestors. I think that's beautiful. And for me personally, the journey I'm on currently is um, I'm half Syrian. My mom was born in Syria. I have a long lineage of my mother's side around Turkey and Syria, and yet I've never been there. And so I grew up in Canada, and so I have this side of me, this ancestral side of me that can feel quite blurry at times because I haven't been exposed a whole lot to it, but it's within me. And so I've been leveraging plant medicines to reconnect with that and things like music and fabric and odors and food. And it's a beautiful process of reconnecting with that. And I'm curious, India, what are ways that, and we've touched a little bit on it earlier. I'm hoping we can go a little bit deeper on different ways where people can reconnect with their ancestors. And what that could look like for people that maybe have never really done that. And you mentioned on a previous call that the ancestors are in the field and you can talk to them. They're in the wind, they're in the sun, they're in the water, and you can connect with them that way. I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of the disconnection that we've had as a human species of all these gifts, that we have from a very young age. We have them. You see babies talking to different spirits, different things, and they're touching into different realities and dimensions, and they don't have to do anything. They don't have to light up a candle or let's set a big altar.
Go to India. Let's go to
Or you go
India.
to we've heard of remote viewing for different organizations in the government. We heard of telepathy as well. There's a lot of information out there that lead us into the knowing that we have these gifts and they're innate in us. And because of the way that it's been interpreted in television and in the cinema world is unattainable. It's not for us. It's like the story of Jesus. He's above, the Catholic Church is throwing him above, and we can never obtain that. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Just keep throwing all your guilts and confess and you'll be saved. He saves you. And so we've been indoctrinated with this story through different medias, different forms, that we're not that special, that we are actually not God itself. And
Mhm.
that takes a lot of courage to walk through that deception and break it from your reality. Because, like I said, if you believe, you conceive it. And until you're able to cross that door of that ego death and rebirth and going through, then you're able to know the power that you have. And so, by sitting
Mhm.
intentionally in any place and invoking and calling with your ancestors, whether you know them or not, they're there. They're you in
Mhm.
different forms. They're you in different times and spaces. There are reflections of you, and you learn from them because they always have a message for you to say. So, by the mere intention of taking your time and sitting in a place and putting this in your agenda to connect to your ancestors and be open to hearing anything that may come from them as far as guidance, where you are in life, that you really want to open this door and be more intuitive into their whispers. What does it mean when the wind blows like this? Like, please speak to me. Like, I really want to feel you. Like, if you have that true intention, the true knowing, they're already listening. They're already making a party out there. They're already okay. Finally, it's connecting. Finally speaking. Like, okay, we've been here waiting. Like, call to just tune in your body like a channel. We're gonna send all the vibrations to you. We're gonna send all the information. We're gonna send everything. Just attune to it. Keep clearing. Keep calling. You know and then through the land, because they live in those lands. Then if you go back to where your ancestors are from, I would love to hear what happens, what gets activated, what the spirits of those
Mhm.
land did for your genetic information. Because something happens when you go to sacred sites, when you go to ancestral sites, when you go to your own ancestor lands. Just by the mere presence of being there, something happens with the information that is being introduced to all of your bodies, your astral body, your physical, all your bodies. And so you don't even have to do anything. It's that simple. Like, just believe, just believe
Mhm.
and trust the
Yeah.
process.
And trust. Yes, absolutely. And I think I don't have the scientific uh, tangible data to prove that, but I've heard or read somewhere along the way that we have direct traces in our DNA from like 14 or 21 generations behind us. And so, physically speaking, like we're very, very much connected to our ancestors. And I always like to say, like, to people in ceremony or circle, when I've been through like really challenging times, they're like saying thank you to the ancestors for giving me the opportunity to look at this, and that this existence is what it is because they know that I'm able to hold it. And I find that very comforting to look back and say, you know what, I do have ancestral trauma, and thank you, because it's an opportunity to grow and flourish out of it, with the intention of doing so. And I have one last question for you, India. What's your greatest wish for the world?
Wow. The greatest vision is for humanity, humankind, to truly, truly connect their heart and minds, to really build that resonance, to build that and calibrate that. And you yeah, I think that's the biggest prayer, because once we're connected to the heart and truly connect to this that makes us unique and connects us to everyone here, every single species here, every single element here, then we can fulfill our purpose. We can fulfill why we're here. We have a sense of knowing, and then we do beautiful things. So my prayer is for all humankind to really join their hearts and minds together in coherence.
Beautiful. I'll pray to that today. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much for
much.
being here. And that was lovely. And thank you for the work you're doing and the words you're sharing, and for being part of a greater vision in the world. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll see you soon. Gracias.
Okay. Bye bye.
Ciao.